3 bone-chilling Airbnb horror stories that haunt your every booking forever. There's an old saying about Airbnb: what happens in the house stays in the walls. It's funny until you realize a ghost could be eavesdropping on your late-night snacks. Picture this: a cozy Airbnb rental, plush pillows, and the smell of warm cookies filling the air. Sounds perfect, right? Except, no one warned you about the chilling whispers that crawl up your spine when you're alone in the living room, or the strange shadows that dance just out of sight. Jess and David were excited for their getaway. The charming cabin tucked away in the woods looked like a postcard come to life, wrapped in twinkling lights and promises of peace. But as they stepped inside, something felt off. The door creaked ominously, and a sudden draft swept through, wrapping around them like icy fingers. It wasn't just the crackling of the old wood they noticed. It was the fleeting sensation of being watched. "Did you feel that?" Jess whispered, her breath hitching, eyes wide. David nodded, discomfort creeping into his chest. After unpacking, they settled in for a boring movie night. The screen flickered, casting strange reflections throughout the room. Just when laughter broke the silence, the fire went out. They lounged in darkness, tension gnawing at the edges. When they heard a slow, deliberate knock, echoing from the basement. Was it just the wind, or were they alone in the house? Jess let out a shaky breath, her heart racing as David fought the urge to investigate. Just then, a flicker of the lights revealed a shadow darting across the room. "Did you see that?" Jess squeaked, gripping her phone like a lifeline. He could only answer with a grim nod, their imaginations already spiraling. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Now back to the eerie cabin. The knock sounded again, unwavering, but this time more urgent. Jess dared to peek around the corner, her pulse thudding in her ears. "Maybe it's just a raccoon?" she suggested weakly, a forced smile on her face. But David's face was pale. "We should check. Together." The heaviness of his words clung to the air as they inched toward the basement door. Each step felt like a countdown to something bad, their instincts screaming to run. They reached for the doorknob, hands brushing. In that moment, everything felt surreal, a heartbeat away from terror. Just as David turned the knob, the lights flickered again, this time plunging them into total darkness. The world faded away, replaced by a silence so thick it swallowed them whole. But before they could react, the door burst open. And just like that, an icy breeze swept into the hallway, carrying the faint scent of pine and something decayingly sweet. Jess caught a glimpse of a figure, pale and translucent, chillingly beautiful yet undeniably horrifying as it invited them down into the depths. What was waiting at the bottom of those stairs? The darkness whispered secrets that made it impossible to turn back. What had once been a romantic retreat twisted into a nightmare that would forever haunt them, leaving you to wonder how far would you go to uncover the truth. The figure lingered at the foot of the stairs, its translucent form glowing faintly in the pitch-black basement. Jess felt her breath quicken, every instinct telling her to flee. She gripped David's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Do we have to?" she whispered, her voice barely a thread. David didn't reply. Instead, he took a step forward, drawn to the apparition. The figure raised a hand, motioning them down. An overwhelming urge surged within Jess, a mix of dread and curiosity. What was it? Why was it calling them? "Wait, we don't know what that is," Jess pleaded, panic lacing her words. David turned back, his face set with determination, yet tinged with uncertainty. "We can't just ignore it." The chilling air seemed to thicken, wrapping around them, squeezing the breath from Jess's lungs. With every heartbeat, The darkness pulsed like a living thing. She felt the icy tendrils reach out, beckoning them deeper. "Maybe we should just leave, call someone?" Jess stammered, doubt gnawing at her. But David was already stepping down, the old wooden stairs creaking in protest beneath him. Each step seemed to echo their dread, as if the house itself knew what was about to unfold. "We came here for an adventure, right?" he said softly, trying to lighten the mood. But Jess could only manage a shaky smile, her heart hammering against her ribs. They descended further, the air growing thicker, colder, swirling with an unsettling mix of pine and the sickly sweet scent of rotting wood. The figure became clearer, a woman, her hair cascading like wisps of fog around her shoulders, her eyes dark pits of despair. A detached harmony enveloped them, the silence now throbbing like a heartbeat. "Help me," her voice was a faint whisper, menacing yet forlorn, leading them deeper into the abyss. Jess's stomach churned. "This isn't right," she gasped as they reached the basement floor. Beneath their feet lay a dim light, flickering desperately from an old lamp covered in layers of dust. The room was small and cluttered, filled with cobwebs and forgotten relics of the past. A table stood in the center, reminiscent of a seance space, with strange symbols carved sporadically into its surface. Jess felt the hairs on her neck rise as she took in the makeshift altar overflowing with wilted flowers and forgotten trinkets. What kind of twisted ritual had happened here? As David drew closer to the table, the figure raised both arms slowly, and whispers filled the air, unintelligible yet urgent. Jess felt a wave of nausea hit her. She stepped back, her heart racing, and as she did, she accidentally knocked over a rusty key off the table. It clanged against the floor, breaking the spell of the ethereal and cracking open a reality filled with fear. The woman turned her gaze down the key now lying in a pool of dim light. Recognition flickered in her eyes, and as if sensing its significance, she drifted closer. "You must find it," she urged, her voice rising, sending a chill down Jess's spine. "Find what?" David asked, his voice trembling slightly as the figure's intensity grew. "Why are you here?" Jess urged, hoping for clarity over the chaos. The figure's mouth opened, but before she could speak, the ground began to tremble beneath them, shaking the very foundations of the cabin. As shadows stretched across the walls, fear gripped Jess tightly, swirling into a panicked frenzy. This wasn't just an innocent cabin getaway. It was a curse cloaked in beauty. Then, the air shifted, the whispers transformed, rising into a maddening crescendo, drowning them in a tempest of voices. "Find it before it finds you." Jess could barely breathe as the shadows writhed around her. The basement was alive with secrets and despair. What were they meant to find? And what would happen if they failed? Just when Jess thought they would be swallowed whole by the darkness, a crack fractured the silence. An old journal lying beneath a pile of rotting leaves caught her eye. With shaking hands, she reached for it. Little did they know, the truth that awaited them might be worse than they could ever imagine. Jess's heart raced as she snatched the aged journal from its resting place. The moment her fingers grazed the cracked leather cover, a bolt of energy coursed through her. She felt herself being drawn into its pages, an inexplicable urge compelling her to flip it open. The musty smell of old paper filled her nostrils, mixing with the basement's damp musk. She skimmed the first few pages, ink faded and barely legible. But one line jumped out at her, jagged and haunting. "The key unlocks the door to the forgotten." Is that what the woman wanted? Jess glanced nervously at David, whose face mirrored her confusion. "What does that even mean?" he murmured, stepping closer to her side. "No idea," she whispered back, anxiety knotting her stomach. The figure hovered nearby, her form flickering, dissatisfying, as if the very light around her shrank under her despair. "Find it," the ghost echoed, her voice pulling tighter around them, almost suffocating in its urgency. The vision of the key seemed etched into Jess's mind. It suddenly felt heavier, its very presence a weight on her conscience. "What if it's this key?" David asked tentatively, reaching down to pick it up. The moment he touched it, the ground beneath them shook again, harder this time, sending tingles of terror down Jess's spine. The shadows surged forward, thick like smoke, clawing for their shadows. Jessie clutched the journal tighter, refusing to let it slip away into the creeping gloom. We need to escape. But David's gaze was locked on a corner of the basement, where the faint glimmer of something metallic shimmered in the darkness. No, wait. Look. He lunged forward, his eyes eager, fueled by an unknown desire to explore the sinister corner. David! Jess cried, grounding herself, but it was too late. He was already disappearing into the shadows, curiosity leading him toward a terrible fate. The figure of the woman shifted closer, her dark eyes boring into Jess. You must guide him, find it. Jess felt her breath hitch in her throat as if the air had been ripped from her lungs. The shadows slithered, creating tendrils that coiled around David's feet, pulling him back as he swayed, torn between the light and dark. David, come back. It's too dangerous, she yelled, panic clawing at her throat as she stepped forward, desperate to save him. Dread pooled in her stomach like a stone as she tore her gaze between the key and David. Would he choose to chase this eerie enchantment, or would he return to her? Just then, a breathless whisper wafted from the pages of the journal she held. The key, the door to the forgotten, holds both promise and peril. Choose wisely without warning. A violent chill swept through the basement, freezing Jess in her tracks. She felt the weight of the obligations, a challenge laid before her. The walls around her seemed to close in, and the whispers shifted again to a high-pitched wail. Suddenly, David froze in place, eyes wide and filled with terror. Jess, I think I see something. What? What do you see? She shouted, her own heart hammering in panic. He pointed, but before he could speak, the shadows released their hold, swirling around him like a vortex, and drew him down to the floor. Jess's heart dropped as he vanished into the darkness. No, David! Her scream echoed through the room, but she was met with a suffocating silence that followed. Instinctively, Jess raced toward the last place she had seen him, but was met with a wall of deepening shadows. Her breath quickened, each inhale feeling more like a plea for air than an act of survival. Mustering every ounce of courage, she held the journal close and shouted into the haze, "Help me! I don't know what to do." The whispers rose to a deafening pitch, crashing against her ears, drowning out all rational thought. Find it before it finds you, before it consumes him. With a sudden burst of determination, Jess turned back to the table, rummaging through the symbols carved into its surface with fervor. Time was running out, but she had to decipher the truth locked within the chaos. She felt it, a thread pulling her toward understanding. But what if she was too late? A chilling realization settled deep in her bones. To save David, she'd have to confront the darkness head-on before it was too late. What curses awaited them in the forgotten corners of this cursed cabin? And would she unravel the thread of fate before it consumed everything she cared about? A cold wave washed over Jess as the whispers morphed into frantic screams. She felt trapped, her pulse pounding in her ears, drowning out the chaotic cacophony. It was as if the basement itself was alive, breathing darkness, and every shadow clung to her, whispering secrets that sent jolts of fear through her limbs. David! She called again, her voice strained and raw. She couldn't remain paralyzed by fear. That journal held answers, and she could not let it slip through her fingers. Clutching it tighter, she flipped through the pages more intently, scanning hastily for any clue that might reveal the location of the key. Find it, the ghostly figure murmured, appearing nearer now, her eyes two dark voids filled with sorrow. Jess drew closer, her breath hitching. Was she imagining it? Or could she see flickers of a memory gracing that spectral face? The horror of the basement faded for a moment as something human shone through the gloom. Suddenly, a girl appeared in the corner of her eye. "Help me," a soft voice whimpered. Jess turned sharply, but only shadow met her gaze. Goosebumps prickled her skin, but she couldn't falter now. If she was to rescue David, she needed to act quickly and decisively. She pored through the symbols carved into the table, desperate for guidance. The journal's words echoed in her mind, urgently pressing for response. The key, it wasn't just an object. It was a metaphorical lifeline. Could it also mean unlocking a memory, a painful truth left to haunt? A clattering sound suddenly erupted nearby, pulling her focus. Heart in her throat, Jess spun around, her heart racing anew. There, just at the threshold of the shadows, lay an object glinting faintly in the flickering flashlight beam she had left on the table. Slowly, she approached. The tendrils of darkness seemed to retreat, swirling cautiously away from the light as Jess moved closer. Her palms began to sweat. The object revealed itself to be a small, ornate key, intertwined with strange symbols, a mirror to those inscribed in the journal. A shiver ran down her spine as she realized she needed to commit. She had to confront whatever horror awaited her. With one more hesitating look back at the swirling shadows, Jess grasped the key tightly, her knuckles whitening as fear surged. "I'll find you, David. I swear." The determination in her heart began to glow, pushing aside the chilling dread as soon as she held the key. The basement quake morphed into whispers, once agonized, now almost pleading. "You've chosen." Before she could explore further, the shadows surged violently back. Jess stumbled, almost losing her balance, the key feeling heavier in her palm. Instantly, an unseen force yanked her backward, dragging her into the blackness. The journal slipped from her grasp, and the moment it hit the floor, the room shook, the very air thickening with despair and dread. "Jess!" David's voice echoed through the whirlpool of shadow, frantic yet filled with hope. But as she fought against the dark gripping her, a chilling realization sank in. He was out there, somewhere lost in the darkness, and time was running out. Could she wield the key to undo whatever had been unleashed before it tore them apart completely? Jess drew in a sharp breath, steadying herself as darkness threatened to consume her whole. "I will not let you take him." Her fierce resolve ignited a spark, and she charged back into the fray, intent on unlocking the truth hidden within the key's secrets. But as she thrust the key toward an ethereal door that began to form from the shadows, a haunting laughter erupted around her, sending chills down her spine. The final test has begun. What awaited Jess beyond this door? And was she prepared to face the consequences of her choice? Only time would tell. The door loomed large, formed from wisps of shadow, swirling like smoke caught in a tempest. Its edges crackled with an energy she could almost taste, a bitter blend of fear and anticipation. Jess raised the key, feeling its weight pulse in her hand. A golden ember of courage kindled within her, pushed by the desperate need to find David. As she pressed the key into the door's lock, a jarring sensation rippled through her. The whispers surged violently, thrumming with an urgency that felt raw and alive. "Open it," they cried out in a chorus of desperation, as if every soul trapped within the darkness wished to break free. With a twist, the key turned, and a sound like shattered glass erupted from the door. She grimaced at the sudden roar. The door swung open to reveal a swirling void filled with blinding light. But it wasn't just light. It was memories, fractured scenes playing out before her in a vibrant tapestry. David's laughter, their shared moments, long glimpses of simple sunsets, and secrets whispered under a sky bursting with stars. Each memory flared brightly but retreated just as quickly, as if daring her to reach for them. Jess stepped inside, her heart racing. "David!" she shouted, her voice swallowed by the roaring void. She felt an ethereal pull, and with each pounding beat of her heart, the scenes shifted. Images of David stretched thin, frayed, fading into the darkness. "Jess!" His voice broke through, echoing once more, this time sounding distant yet more urgent. "You have to hurry." The memories morphed again, this time dissolving into haunting glimpses of what looked like a forgotten past, a girl sitting on a swing, the same lonely basement in grayscale as a backdrop, a shadow towering over her. Jess felt a flash of recognition. The girl was the spirit she had seen earlier. "Don't forget," the ghostly form whispered. With every syllable, the shadows around Jess shifted their weight, inching closer, as if eager to consume her. Jess's stomach churned. What had happened here? What was hidden within this darkness? Sudden panic prickled her skin. "What do I have to do?" she pleaded, not sure if she was addressing the figure, the swirling past, or the darkness closing in on her. "Remember the key," the spirit rasped, fading into wisps of smoke. Find the truth within before she could grasp the meaning. The space began to collapse around her, forcing Jess to lurch forward. She couldn't let this moment slip away. With a deep, shuddering breath, she closed her eyes, grasping tightly to the fragments of memories surrounding her. She focused on David, on their bond, and the feeling of trust and love they shared. The walls of despair squeezed tighter, but the warmth of that connection flared brightly within her chest, pushing back the advancing darkness. "Just hold on," she screamed, her own voice breaking through the chaos. An incandescent light shot from her heart, illuminating the shadows, forcing them to retreat. But the light revealed more than just her will. It showcased something hidden, a glimmer of truth lost within layers of sorrow. The memories unfolded like petals, revealing their core. David trapped in a swirling abyss, tinged with fear and a bitter sorrow that clawed at her heart. "Jess," he shouted, eyes wild, "you have to find me. Break the cycle." Without a moment's hesitation, she charged toward the shimmering point, drawn by the desperate plea in his voice. Just as she reached for him, the floor split open, an unseen force attempting to drag her down. "No," Jess shouted. "I won't lose you." She hurled the key into the glimmering mass, a desperate plea echoing as it shattered the darkness. The swirling energy twisted, threatening to unleash chaos, but within that chaos was a promise. In an explosion of light, the memories and shadows fused together, revealing a path. But Jess could feel it. This wouldn't be the end. Something darker stirred in the void, and she knew the greater battle was yet to come. Behind her, the laughter rose again, sharp and mocking. "You think this is over?" jeered. "The real test begins now." With a pounding heart, Jess stepped further into the unknown, racing toward David's voice and the looming truth that threatened everything she held dear. There was no turning back. What awaited them in the dark depths? And would they survive the reckoning of haunted memories? The shadows buzzed around her, hungry for answers, waiting for their moment to strike. The pull of David's voice was like a lifeline, strong and vibrant against the crashing chaos surrounding her. Jess lunged deeper into the void, the air thickening with electric tension. Each step felt like running through water, the weight of the shadows pressing against her as if they wanted nothing more than to anchor her down. "Jess," his voice came again, a desperate echo that sent chills down her spine. "You can do this." A storm of memories swirled wildly around her, images of laughter and warmth juxtaposed against the starkness of what now threatened to consume them. She glimpsed a younger version of David, carefree, his hair tousled, his gaze sparkling with hope. It twisted her heart, knowing he didn't belong here. "Stay with me," she shouted into the whirling memories, catching glimpses of their life together. A picnic in the park, laughter under the fountain, secrets shared in the moonlight. The stark contrast of joy and despair burned into her mind. But the shadows whispered cruelly, twisting the scenes into nightmares. She saw the little girl on the swing again, only this time she was crying tears that dripped into the darkness, swallowed whole before they hit the ground. "Why?" Jess felt the agonizing knot in her stomach tighten. "What happened to you? Find the truth. Break the cycle." The ghostly voice echoed, a haunting reminder that time was running out. Just then, the shadows around her surged forward, dark tendrils reaching out like greedy fingers. Jess stumbled back, her heart racing. "No, I won't let you take him." She could feel the darkness pulsing, testing her resolve, crushing her spirit. "Jess," David shouted again, his voice next to her, yet echoing as if he were miles away. "You need to believe in us. Trust yourself." With a growl of defiance, Jess reached into her pocket, pulling out the key, its metallic sheen reflecting the shadow's flickering light. "This has to mean something." She couldn't let fear rule her. She needed to harness that ember of courage deep within her. The whispers turned into a cacophony, drowning out her thoughts. "Foolish girl. You can't escape. Shut up," she yelled, fury igniting her spirit. "I won't let you win." She closed her eyes, channeling the love she felt for David, allowing that connection to swell and wash over her like a tidal wave. She felt it, the warmth of their bond sparking a flame brighter than any shadow, pushing through the panic and dread. With a forceful shout, she hurled the key into the swirling mass of shadows. "I am breaking this cycle." An explosion of light filled the space, causing Jess to shield her eyes. The key shattered the darkness, igniting the memories into an ethereal glow. She felt the ground tremble beneath her, spinning circles of light forming a passageway. "Go, Jess," David cried. "Find me." But before she could move, the shadows shrieked, combating the light with anguished howls, spiraling around her. "This isn't over." They screamed, voices weaving through the void, promising clashing nightmares yet to come. Panic clawed at Jess as she glanced back. The shadows, now writhing in anger, morphed into terrifying figures, their faces twisted, eyes glinting with menace. With a resolve forged from desperation, she stepped forward into the brilliant light streaming from the now splintered shadows. "I will find you, David." She charged into the unknown, heart pounding, driven by fear and fierce hope as she plunged deeper into the light. A chilling thought crept in: what if breaking the cycle opened a door to something much darker? The luminous path stretched before her, shifting with possibilities, but the wrath of the shadows still clawed behind her. She could feel their presence, lurking like vultures waiting to feast on despair. Would their connection be strong enough to turn the tides? Or was a more sinister truth waiting at the end of this blinding path? She pressed on, the weight of the shadows haunting her every step. Would she be too late to save him? Time was slipping away, and from the depths, a new revelation loomed. The light engulfed Jess, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. For a fleeting moment, fear dissolved, replaced by sheer certainty. She was meant to be here, meant to find David. But that solace shattered when the brilliance morphed into an eerie glow, casting long shadows on an unfamiliar landscape. She found herself standing on a cobblestone street, the air heavy with mist and nostalgia. It felt like a forgotten town, lost in time, where everything was frozen between memories and ghosts. Flickering street lamps illuminated the silhouettes of old houses, their peeling paint and broken windows whispering secrets of a past long buried. "David," she called out, her voice echoing in the silence, swallowed whole by the void around her. The familiar ache surged in her chest, a mixture of hope and desperation clawing at her throat. The shadows had followed her, lurking in the periphery, their intent clear. They wanted to consume her. Each step she took felt deliberate, yet anxiety raced through her like a wild fire. What truth could lie in this town? Who lived here, and what had tethered David to this forsaken place? Her heart beat wildly in her ears as she scanned the dimly lit street, longing for a sign, for something, anything that would lead her to him. Then, she heard it, a soft whisper slithering through the cold air, luring her toward a dilapidated house at the end of the street. The windows were dark but seemed to pulse with a life of their own, flickering like a heartbeat. With no other choice, Jess stepped forward, the cobblestones crumbling beneath her weight, each crack echoing her fear. As she reached the front door, it creaked open, revealing a hallway shrouded in darkness. "Hello?" she ventured, her voice trembling. The shadows danced closer behind her, a sinister reminder that time was slipping through her fingers. A chill raced up her spine as she stepped inside. The air was stale, suffocating. Dust motes caught in the dim sunlight trickling through the cracked windows hung like glimmering obstructions. Old portraits lined the walls, faces twisted into expressions of sorrow, their eyes following her, haunted yet familiar. Then she saw it, a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar, inviting her to enter. Jess hesitated, her instincts pulling her back, but she couldn't turn away from the prospect of finding David. She needed answers. Pushing the door open, she was met with a room filled with stacks of old newspapers, each headline a chilling echo of forgotten tragedies. The air crackled, charged with a sense of wrongness that made her stomach twist. Amid the chaos, she saw something, a photograph torn at the edges, with a group of smiling faces. And there, right in the center, stood a youthful David, his familiar grin radiating joy against a backdrop of despair. Just as she reached for it, something shifted in the darkness behind her. The shadows seemed to coalesce, transforming into figures of lost souls, their mouths moving in silent agony, begging for release. Jess stumbled back, heart racing, the photograph slipping from her fingers. "David!" she screamed. The sound echoed with raw desperation. The room began to spin, the walls closing in as terror overwhelmed her. The figures advanced, their shadows wrapping around her like merciless chains. "Find the truth! Save us all!" A voice echoed suddenly, cracking through the chaos. But just as quickly, it was drowned by the wails of the shadows, their despair enveloping the room in thick, suffocating darkness. Heart-hammering, Jess glanced at the photograph on the ground, the faces beginning to blur as fear surged through her. "No, I won't let this happen." With a sudden rush of adrenaline, Jess lunged forward, grabbing the photo just as the shadows descended upon her. The faces shifted, contorted into a road map of pain and anguish. And in that split second, a shocking realization hit her. The truth wasn't just about David. It was about the cycle of suffering that linked them all. "Who are you?" she yelled, staring into the gaping void of the dark, her voice full of fury and resolution. Just then, the shadows paused, as if waiting. In the moment of silence, Jess's mind raced. What if discovering the truth meant facing the darkest of secrets, ones that had kept David trapped and unresolved? The pulse of the photograph radiated warmth against her shaking fingers, but shadows lingered, whispering temptations of retreat. Would she dare confront the darkness, or would she succumb to its grasp and lose David forever? The thundering echoes of the past threatened to pull her down once more, and with it, she realized, a new truth awaited her just beyond the veil. Jess stepped forward, battling with the unknown, ready to expose the darkness surrounding them once and for all. What awaited her in the depths of this truth? Would she be strong enough to face it? Or would she, too, become another shadow lost to time? The shadows hesitated, shivering slightly as though Jess's defiance had shaken them from their tormented reverie. For a moment, the room held its breath as uncertainty hung thick like the dust in the air. She could feel the shockwaves of their suffering ripple around her, pulling her into a whirlwind of panic and despair. "David!" she cried again, pinning her hope to the sound of his name. The photograph pulsed with warmth in her grasp, a lifeline amidst the encroaching darkness. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of movement, any clue that might lead her to him. She could hear the rumbling of more shadows behind her, like distant thunder. Each phantom echoed the sorrow of the lost, their echoes reverberating in Jess's core. "Why can't you let him go?" she shouted, feeling the strength of her voice rising, even if fear threatened to break her down. Suddenly, ripples of laughter danced out from the shadows. It was cruel, mocking as if they found her valor to be deliciously naive. The specters moved closer, a tide of anguished faces, eyes wide with despair. They whispered secrets in a cacophony of hushed tones, merging into a single, harrowing question. Why does he dwell here? In that very moment, Jess felt the pull of truth tugging at her heart, urging her to look closer at the old newspaper headlines scattered across the room. Her feet moved almost instinctively, propelled by a mix of dread and determination. She knelt down, examining articles with yellowed edges that told tales of tragedy, disappearances, accidents, and ghosts trapped in the seams of history. Her finger traced the words, her breath hitching at the stark realities laid bare before her. Each detail beat like a drum in her ears, filling her with dread. Lost child of Crestwood, forgotten tragedy of 1924, the haunting shadows of nightfall. Jess felt sick. The realization clawed through her mind. The essence of this place, these shadows, they were never just lost souls. They were victims caught in a web woven from their past. And deep down, she sensed that David was ensnared in their plight, tied to those stories she read. "David!" she shouted again, her voice stronger, echoing through the dark room. "Tell me where you are." But the shadows grew restless, thronging around her like a storm about to break. She could feel their desolation wash over her again, heavy and smothering, trying to coax her back into submission. They beckoned her to delve into the darkness, promising her answers, yet threatening to swallow her whole. "Your truth will set us free," a soft voice cried out, distinct from the others. "Find the source and you shall find him." Jess hesitated. The shadows tightened around her, and she could see flickers of faces behind them, faces of children, parents, lovers lost to sorrow. She knew she needed the source, but the shadows offered no guidance. They only devised to confuse her, to prey on her desperation. Taking a deep breath, Jess sank her will into the photograph and envisioned David. "I'm not leaving without you. I will free you. I will find you." All at once, the shadows recoiled, and a sudden gust of wind howled through the room, knocking over stacks of newspapers. The mists around her twinkled as if revealing a hidden path, one winding deeper into the house, leading her away from the hall of despair. Jess stepped forward, heart pounding, following the beckoning mist, aware of the eyes watching her retreat with a mix of hope and malice. What secrets lay at the end of this path? Would she find David? Or would she stumble upon an even darker truth that the shadows were desperate to keep hidden? Jessie couldn't shake the feeling that each step brought her closer to danger or salvation. Just as she crossed the threshold of another door, a chilling realization struck. What if confronting the truth meant facing the very essence of her own fears? The path twisted away into a dimly lit corridor, the air thick and suffocating. Jess pressed forward, the photograph still warm in her grasp, a reluctant talisman for the chaotic madness swirling around her. Shadows slithered against the walls, their shapes writhing like snakes poised to strike. With each cautious step, the whispers intensified, a feverish hum that pulsated with dread. "You shouldn't be here," they murmured. "Turn back before it's too late." A deep shiver ran down her spine, but Jess's resolve hardened. David needed her, and she'd be damned if she turned around now. As she walked, the corridor narrowed, walls closing in like a trap. The fading whispers tugged at her mind, threatening to reel her in with their mournful songs. She stopped, taking a deep breath, trying to drown out the chaos swirling around her. Think, she urged herself. What was the source they spoke of? At the end of the hall was a door, ancient and ornately carved, etched with symbols she couldn't decipher. As she approached, her heart raced. This must be it, the door to whatever darkness had ensnared David. She placed a trembling hand on the cold surface, and images flooded her mind, scenes of despair, flickering before her eyes. A child's laughter fading into despair. An anguished mother searching endlessly. "Please," Jess whispered, steadying herself before plunging into the unknown. She pushed the door open, and it creaked like an angry ghost awakened from slumber. Inside, the room was bathed in an eerie light, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. In the center stood an old mirror, its surface reflecting not her, but a swirling cloud of faces, many eyes locked in expressions of sorrow and longing. Jess took a few steps forward, mesmerized. Each face was a soul, trapped just like David, or perhaps even him among them. "Jess, help me," a voice wafted from the depths of the mirror, soft and plaintive. Her heart raced. "David?" Suddenly, the shadows in the room coalesced, shifting into a turbulent storm, swirling faster and faster until all she could see were flashes of anguish and despair. "What do you want?" she cried out, stumbling backward. The faces in the mirror pressed against the glass, mouths moving silently, desperate for release. "Find the truth," they echoed. "He is linked to the past." Fear clawed at her chest, teetering on the brink of panic. The truth? What truth? Jess caught her breath, feeling as if she were about to drown. As she reached out to touch the mirror, its surface rippled, and a memory swept over her like a tide. She saw a brief image, a newspaper article about David, one she hadn't noticed earlier. The missing of Crestwood, it read in bold letters, the photograph of a boy captured, forever frozen in time. Below it, names of the lost, interwoven with fate, all leading back to this moment, this room. The shapes around her surged forward, screams echoing in a cacophony of despair. She could feel their sorrow pressing on her chest, threatening to crush her spirit. "You must make the choice. Free us and he may return." "Stop!" Jess shouted, fighting the urge to succumb to their grief. I can't do this. Suddenly, the mirror exploded in a frenzy of shards, flooding the room with brilliant light. Her vision blurred, and she stumbled back, the warmth of the photograph fading from her grasp. Guide and tormentor, the shadows shifts in a whirlwind around Jess, dragging her into despair. The last thing she saw was the frantic, hopeful face of David etched within the swirling chaos before she was engulfed by a blinding white light as she surrendered to the unknown. A new question tore through her. Would she have the courage to face the truth that could shatter her world? And just like that, she was gone, leaving the echoes of the lost behind her, poised at the edge of a revelation that would change everything. Jess floated in a blinding expanse, an overwhelming swirl of color and light. The warmth embraced her like a long-lost friend, whispering of hope and possibility. But it also carried the weight of sorrow, a reminder that she was not free just yet. Memories flickered in the distant visions of David, laughing and alive, juxtaposed with shadows of despair that clawed at the edges of her mind as the light began to dim. She felt herself solidify into a form once more. She blinked, bringing the world into focus. Broken shards of the mirror were scattered around her, glinting like stars fallen from the sky. Each shard reflected faces lost to time, faces of the forgotten, trapped souls yearning for liberation. Jess shivered, feeling their pain echoing within her, a haunting reminder of what she had to confront. David, she called out, her voice trembling in the remnants of the chaos. Where are you? A silence followed, thick and suffocating. The shadows loomed large, still swirling, but they felt different now, less malevolent and more a collective cry for justice. And just before she thought they might snatch her back into their abyss, a familiar voice resounded through the suffocating darkness. Jess, her heart leaped. There he was, emerging from the shadows, looking worn yet unwavering. David's eyes were wild but filled with palpable hope, as if he had escaped a nightmare only to find the dawn. David, she gasped, rushing toward him. Their hands met, fingers intertwined, creating a spark that shone like a beacon against the encroaching night. Are you okay? He asked, scanning her face for signs of fear. I am now, she replied, relief flooding her chest. But then her expression turned serious. We need to understand what binds us to this place. The shadows, they're not just enemies. They're echoes of a past filled with sorrow and loss. David nodded, gripping her hand tighter as an understanding passed between them. You broke the mirror, Jess. You were the key. What does that mean? She questioned, glancing back at the shards sparkling around them. The shadows pulsed softly, as if alive, awaiting her next move. We didn't just free ourselves. We unleashed the truth. In that moment, a new voice broke through, warm yet commanding. Find the source, confront the chains that bind. Jess and David exchanged glances, their bond lending strength. They knew they had to face whatever lay ahead, together, stronger than the darkness that threatened to ensnare them once more. Taking a deep breath, Jess turned back to the mirror fragments strewn across the floor. Each piece told a story, memories carved in sorrow, waiting for a moment of reckoning. With sudden clarity, she began piecing them together, each shard illuminating the past, shedding light on the reasons for the darkness. With each fragment they joined, a vision unfolded. The eerie faces coalesced into a narrative of families torn apart, trauma festering through generations. Together, they discovered the name that haunted the very core of the house, the source of it all, the child lost to abandonment, forgotten in the echoes of time. That a sudden surge of empathy washed over them as the collective sorrow of the shadows merged with their own hearts. We need to help them, David spoke solemnly, tears brimming in his eyes. We can't let this cycle continue. They took each shard of memory, and with unwavering determination, they called out to the shadows. We will reveal your stories, give you the honor you deserve. The shadows momentarily paused, their chaotic energy waning as they surrounded Jess and David. Free us, they murmured in unison, drawing strength from their resolve as Jess and David resumed their efforts to connect and honor those lost in the web of pain. The energy shifted. They felt the ground tremble, the air crackle with possibility. It was as if every soul joined forces, creating a powerful tidal wave of harmony that spiraled outward from them. A radiant light exploded from their hands, washing over the myriad of shadows. The faces smiled as the memories surged forth, echoing through the walls of time and space, cascading like a waterfall of renewal. "Thank you," they sang, their voices resonating in a symphony of justice, finally released from their chains. With that harmony, Jess felt the house around them begin to shift and dissolve into a backdrop of serene beauty. The warmth enveloped them, pushing the shadows away, igniting a path into the light. "Let us go home," Jess said, eyes glistening with relief. David squeezed her hand as they stepped forward together, leaving behind the echoes of despair and fear. With each step, they felt lighter, unburdened as they stepped back into the world that awaited them as dawn broke. They emerged hand in hand, the past casting no shadow over their smiles. They walked away from the cabin and into the sunlight, ready to embrace their lives, grateful for the bond they had forged through the darkness they faced together. And as the last shred of shadow faded, Jess's heart swelled with hope, knowing that even the heaviest burdens could be lifted, and every voice could find its peace. But remember, this era of closure was not for just them, it was for anyone willing to confront their own shadows, to face the stories buried deep and to fight for connections that mattered. Change was possible and healing was just a brave step away. Now, if you felt that surge of emotion, if the story resonated with you, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm because it really helps me out. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything,